Hey YouTube, it's your boy Widgie here, coming at you with some more strategy games with AoE 3DE, and today I'm giving you the beginner's guide to China. That's it, we're doing it. We're doing it live today, so you guys can jump on the ladder, you can jump into casual, and you can dominate as China. People are going to look at you and think, what, China? China, they're terrible. No. This is where we change that, and this is where you can jump on, you can play as China and dominate and have a ton of fun. So if you're with me, let's do this. If you enjoy this video and many others on my channel, please feel free to drop a like, and also you can catch me streaming on Twitch at Widgie1. Let's do this. So before we get into the juicy bits, we are going to be breaking this down just like any other guide that I do into 3 pieces. The first is going to be the unique features, buildings and units of the civilization. The second will be a deck, and that will be a 1v1 and also a team deck for you. And the final thing will be me sort of showcasing you an actual build order in a 1v1 situation. So without further ado, let's get into the first part, which is the unique units, buildings and features. Let's do it. Right, ladies and gents, here we go. Let's jump into the features of China. So the first one is we have a population of 220, which is crucial for China because the whole thing with the civilization is we are more about quantity rather than quality. So having that 220 pop is sweet as a nut, as I say. If you don't know what that saying is, don't worry about it. So moving on to the next, we have villages which combine the function of a house and a livestock pen, which is awesome. Now the village will provide you with 20 population rather than 10 as a house, and it will cost you 180 wood. So it is significantly cheaper per pop to wood, which is really nice. And the livestock pen will also mean that any herdables that you have, they will feed off of the village and they will gather food a lot quicker, so that can help you age up if you need to, or if you need food in a tight spot. So moving on to the next, the big thing, the main thing about China which people really struggle with is the banner armies. And the banner army is a group of units that are different types, and they will essentially train in one batch. And there's around, I believe it's maybe 6 or 7 different banner types, don't quote me on that, but really you kind of only really use around 3 or 4 banner types primarily in the game, depending on what civilization you're against. So that's really crucial. You start with a goat, which is great to use with the village because the village acts as a livestock pen. Villagers gather export as they gather resources. That's also an awesome thing as well. So export's really good because you use that with your consulate to get all sorts of upgrades and units and stuff like that, which we will see in the build order. The next is the consulate to ally with a European civilization, and you gather and you get their units and technologies by spending export. That's pretty much across all of the other Asian civs, and you build wonders to advance in age, which is of course another thing that the Asian civs do. Moving on to the unique units, we have just a villager standard. The Shaolin Master and Disciple are amazing. I've got to say they're one of the toughest explorers, so they're really good, and you kind of want to get them out there as soon as you can and take down as many treasures as possible to age up as quick as you can and get yourself in front. So I really like the Shaolin Master, who can also train disciples, which are actually really good in combat, and they're seriously underrated. You've got the Sentry and Irregulars, and they're sort of units like your counter militia units that you can get out of your TC if you're in a tight spot. The Chu Canoes, and you can see here we've got an array. I'm sort of moving with my hand on the camera, but you can't even see that. But we've got an array of all different types of units, similar to every other Asian civ. Very unique units. I'm not going to go through all of these, but some of the best are the Arquebusiers. You've got the Steppe Riders that are good for raiding, the Kashyyyks, which are your good anti-cav. Your Iron Flail and your Meaty Hammers are awesome units, and you can get both of those units in a banner army, which is amazing. And you've got other things here as well, other good ships you can use and all sorts, but we're not going to go too in depth about that. We are just going to have a little look at the unique buildings. We've mentioned the village. The rice paddy is standard with Asian civs, can switch between food and coin. You've got a monastery, you've got a castle, you've got a consulate, so a castle, yeah, that's quite unique to China. It's just a defensive building and can train like hand mortars, which are really good. And you've got the consulate, which I've mentioned, and finally the War Academy, which is your barracks and stable combined. This is what I like about China. You don't have to worry about building all these different military buildings. Most of the time you're just going to have a War Academy, a consulate and a castle, and that's it. Pretty much that's it. So really, really nice. And obviously the wonders here, which you can see here. And we'll run through these in more depth in the build order guide. So that's a quick run through of the unique units, features and buildings. And let's get on with the juicy stuff, which is the decks. Right guys, we are running through the juicy 1v1 and team decks. I'm not going to go through every single card and explain them to you. Best thing I would suggest to do is either just pause this video and then just copy the deck, or you can jump over to Aussie Drongo's Discord server, where I believe I've pretty much got all these decks from. I have adjusted them maybe very, very slightly, but I really suggest hitting up his Discord because he has starter decks for every civilization, for team land, water, 1v1 land and water as well. So let's look at the 1v1 land very quickly. The first card is your Northern Refugees, which is essentially gives you 3 villages. If you build 2 villages, you'll get 3 villages in total, because it will muster 1 from the TC and 1 from each of your village. So that's a crucial card that most people will use. Age 2, great cards to have are obviously your wood and gold. You can have an extra 600 wood in this row here. It depends how you want to play Age 2. If you want to play it more aggressively, I would suggest potentially getting another 600 wood. That will help you produce a certain banner army that will require food and wood, which we'll get into in the build order. So that's good. Also, a few unit cards are great. The Step Rider card is really good for raiding early if you want to put some pressure on. You've got the Mongolian Scourge if you also want to increase your Step Rider damage, and your Kashyyyks as well, which are your anti-cav unit. You've got the Banished School. I don't really use this card that much, so you could potentially change this one. That just reduces the time of the banner army production. You've got Diplomatic Intrigue, which is super crucial for your consulate. Makes it worthwhile. You can get stuff really, really cheap once you've used it. And sometimes in certain situations you can spend 500 gold and get some 10 Rattan shields, which can be pretty fun to play with. Moving on to Age 3 very quickly then, we've got a nice solid wood and gold again. I always suggest just having wood and gold. We've got a few unit shipments again, very similar to the format of Age 2. You've got 2 resources, you've got a few unit cards, and then you've got something to do with your consulate, which is your intervention. And then you've got 2 mercenary cards here, very similar to like the Rattan shield, but more expensive. And the Manchus here, the Manchurian cavalry archers, are extremely good. So a very, very good pick if you're in a tight spot and you need to take down some cavalry. Age 4, I'm not going to touch on this too much. We're just going to be looking at Age 1, 2 and 3 so you can get an idea. Because, you know, majority of 1v1 games in my sort of ELO, the sort of beginner to intermediate, you won't really actually get into Age 4 that often. You usually will finish the game by Age 3. But there is some Age 4 cards here. Majority of them are just unit cards. And you've got 1 old Dynasty Reform, which is if you want to keep using the old Han banner army, which is a banner army that you start with in Age 2. But we'll go through all of that in the build order. So that's the 1v1 land. 1v1 water is very similar. It's just replacing a couple of cards with some ship cards. So nothing too difficult there. Moving on to the team land. Once again, similar to the 1v1 land, but we don't have as many unit cards and we have more cards that are focusing on resource gather rate increases, because team games tend to last a lot longer than 1v1 games. So it's always best to have a few more resource or eco cards rather than military cards. Team water, once again, exactly the same. Very similar to the team land, but you've just got some ships in there and everything like that. So there's the 4 decks. We're not going to look at that one because that 1v1 rush deck is old and it's not useful. So there you go, guys. As I say, feel free to pause it, do whatever you need to do, and let's jump into the final part, which is, of course, looking at that juicy 1v1 build order in action. Right, guys, we are here with the final part, which is the build order. So this is a replay of myself playing as China versus an Ottoman opponent called Master of Doot. So without further ado, let's hit that play button and let's get off Master of Doot and switch over to myself. And here we go. So I'm going to be pausing it every now and then, sort of giving you an overall build order that I think is really good as China. And I will give you 2 options of where you should go depending on the scenario. So that you've got sort of 2 main options for China depending on how you want to play the game. So the first thing you'll do, if you're very new to the game, you just want to gather your crates up, and then you want to start using a couple of your villagers to start gathering some of the hunts. And you want to use 1 vill to start building your village. and then a couple of villagers to move off and start chopping some wood. That's ideally what you want to do. I will do that in a second. There we go. A couple of villagers move over to wood. So the macro sort of split, I call it the macro split, which essentially means, when I say that, I mean how many people are on the certain resources. What's our resource split like? So at the start of the game, you kind of want 3 or 4 people on food and you want the rest on wood. You ideally want to build 2 villages, and obviously each village costs 180, so you need 360 wood. So we need to make sure that we need to chop another 20 wood here to be able to build the second village. And while we're doing that, we're going to use our awesome explorer, as I mentioned, super tough, to take down some of the treasures nearby and start exploring. I don't suggest that you create any more disciples. I think disciples cost 80 food or maybe 100 food. I'm not too sure. I wouldn't suggest creating any disciples in age 1 because you want to use that food to be able to age up into age 2. So I should be getting the villagers off of wood now. There we go. I over chopped by 5. You can see that. And now we want to move all the villagers over to food. And we want to just make sure that we are herding. We're herding our hunts towards the TC. And as I say, if you're not too sure what I mean when I say herding the hunts, there are some beginner guides that I've got. 5 basic tips for beginners for economy and for military as well. I've got other beginner guides on some other civs as well, so if you guys want to check that out on the channel, please feel free to do so. So we're just going to keep gathering food. Quite simple really, and we've got our first card that we're getting in, which is our Northern Refugees, which is the one where we get a villager from each village and town centre, and it does a one-time muster. So you'll see that we'll get 3 villagers at the end of this. And the good thing about villages that I've got to mention is that you can garrison units in it. So you can garrison your villagers in your village, if that makes sense, which is really nice. And I'll tell you why that's nice, because it's good for if people are trying to raid you. So if you want to go to a certain hunt that's outside of your base, if you have the wood available, I suggest building a village next to that hunt or next to a gold mine. So if there are any cav moving around that wants to try and take down your villages, you can quickly garrison them in the village and keep them safe. So we're just using our explorer here to move around the map. And what we want to make sure that we're doing is we want to make sure that we're locating a available trade post. And the reason that we want to do that is because when we start to get into the second age, and we call that the transition, which is between ages, we want to start chopping for wood so that we can build a trading post. That's going to be the next stage to the build order. You see here, I'm just keep making villages, keep making sure that I'm herding as best I can, and using my explorers to take down treasures. You can see here my opponent is trying to be sneaky. He thinks he's going to take the treasure here. He does something a little silly there, uses his crack shot ability, which makes it really easy for me to take the treasure. And we take that from him. So he helped us gather 80 coin there, which was very nice. And look at that, we've got 255 gold from the treasures that we've been gathering, which is really nice. That's a nice amount of gold. And there we go. So we had our 800 food, and we are putting down our wonder to get into age 2. Now our wonder is the Summer Palace. Now I will suggest to you guys, at the level that I'm at, and beginners, intermediate players, whatever, if you're playing China, I always suggest going for the Summer Palace first. Now the reason is sort of threefold actually, a threefold reason. First one is it gives you 400 food, which if you want to go immediately up into age 3, you've got that extra 400 food to help you along the way. Second reason, I just hit my glasses. Second reason is it's got 5,000 HP. So if you build it right next to your town centre, it acts as a massive shield. It's a big barrier for the enemy to try and get through to get to your town centre and potentially to some of your villagers. So it's a good massive building that can just block and cause issues for your opponent if they're trying to rush you. So that's the second. And the third is that it generates a free army for you every now and then. It says that it automatically spawns a banner army that is available at the War Academy of the player's choice at no cost, which is really nice. So there you go. 3 reasons why you've got to go Summer Palace first. And that's the sort of placement I suggest is literally right next to your TC. When I mean right next to it, I mean right next to it. And preferably, I mean, I should have really placed this village a little bit better perhaps. Maybe over here, not in the front, because if I'm expecting a rush, then potentially I could have moved that village there. That's not the best placement. So we are moving over now to wood. You can see the macro split now has changed, and we've got the majority of people on wood, and we've still got a few on food, because we are going to be getting 400 food from the TC. Sorry, from the age up, we're going to be getting 400 food. And you can see here we're just using our explorer to gather more treasures. Now what I should be doing, which I'm going to be a little bit late for now, is I've got to get that explorer over to that trade post so I can build it. And I'll need 200 wood to build a TP. So you just want to keep chopping that wood for 200 wood. And at this point now is when you should be building your TP, but I am a little bit late in doing that. So I just want to talk about the decisions that you can make here. So I mentioned at the start that there's 2 decisions that you can make when you're playing as China. Now when I say this, these are not the 2 only decisions. Just for a beginner and intermediate player, I would suggest these 2 options. Now the first option is that you stop cutting wood now and you transfer over to gold and food, and then you get the 700 gold shipment the minute you age up. And then you get into age 3 as soon as you can. And that's kind of called like a naked FF. You know, it's quite greedy. You won't have a lot of protection if you get rushed. But if you think you can do it and you can get up into age 3 quickly, then do that. Second option is to fight in age 2. Now, this is really fun, and I sort of advise you to do this first if you're new to China, which is play more in age 2. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you. So I'm going to shut up, I'm going to play it, and I suggest playing more in age 2. And then when you feel comfortable and you want to age up, get that 700 coin shipment and go ahead and age up. Okay, so we're up into age 2. We've got our 400 food has dropped at the TC. And we've still got those villagers on wood, because we're going to need those villagers on wood. Trust me. So I need to pick my next shipment here. I'm going to do that very shortly. There we go. And I've gone for the 700 wood. So once again, there's many ways you can do this. It's entirely up to you. Instead of going to 700 wood first, if you want to put really early pressure on, you can go for the 7 step riders. That's really good for raiding. And a lot of people do that. A lot of people go 7 step riders first. It's entirely up to you. I like to go 700 wood because I want to get my buildings down and I want to start making my first banner army as soon as possible. And then usually after the 700 wood, I'll then go to the 7 step riders. Because we've got a TP up, it will mean that we get XP a lot quicker. And before you know it, we'll have another TC shipment to use. Okay. So at the banner army here, I am training the free standard army, which is essentially, I believe it's 2 step riders and 3 chew canoes. So basically it's just cav, it's a raiding cav and a skirmishing unit essentially. Now you can change that and you can go for the old banner army, which is a pike and a chew canoe. That can be quite good if you want to play more defensive, but we're going to be getting that banner army out of this. We're going to be training those banner armies. So whenever you're training a banner army, I always suggest that whatever you're training, don't train that same banner army in the Summer Palace, if that makes sense. You want to use a different kind of army, so you can have quite a diverse unit composition. So our second card here is the 7 step riders. I'm just going to pause it here because there's a few things going on. So my second shipment here is the 7 step riders, and you can see here I scouted that he had a stables, and he's sort of playing like a semi-FF style, so a semi-fast fortress. He's opening with the stables, and he's going to use 5 Hussar to try and raid and harass me. So we'll see how that goes. So I don't normally see this from Ottoman. I normally see some sort of either an age 2 aggression with Janissaries and Abasguns, or I see a straight fast fortress. So this was kind of interesting to see. And he is going to take my explorer down here, I think. Yeah. So he got quite a bit of experience from that. Get my village. I unfortunately lost a villager there, which was really bad of me. But our first banner army spawns. Luckily, those pikes spawn directly on the cav, which is nice. And our 7 step riders come out, which is good. Now those step riders are very weak. They're not really heavy cav. They're more used for like raiding. And they've got high siege, so they're good at taking down buildings. They're not really good at taking down other cav that well. So you can see here now that I've got my wood shipment. I've got a ton of wood here banked up, so I really need to spend it. And I'm going to start building some more buildings. Get the infrastructure built. There you go, I'm building another village. And this is something that I've got to let you guys know. The minute you start rolling with your age 2 and your age 3, you are going to be getting out a lot of units. Just remember, it's China. China have the largest population in the world, I think. I hope that's right. I'm pretty certain that's still correct. They have the largest pop, and that's how this civ is played on the game. You know, a very, very large amount of units, and you'll get them extremely quickly. You've got to make sure that you're building villages, because I always get pop capped, and it's extremely frustrating. So just bear that in mind. Anyway, we are moving out now, seeing what he's got. And we can see he's got 4 hussars left. And I'm going to push him at this point because I've got 3 pikes. And the pikes there are doing quite a good job. And he's not really focusing the pikes. And he's already lost 1 hussar. I've lost 1 step rider, but they're a lot cheaper. So I wouldn't worry. And we've managed to snare 1 of his hussars. And we've got another banner army. I mean, look what's coming out. We've already got our first... army from the Summer Palace has come out for free, and now we've got our other old Han banner army, so our second banner army has come out now. And look, we're already overpopped, and we've just built that village to save us. Can you see what I'm saying about population? You've got to be careful. So I feel like pushing on him now and seeing if I can apply some pressure, because we had a relatively good exchange there. He sort of lost 3 hussars, and he only really took down 1 villager. And you can see, look at my macro. Look at my macro. My macro right now is just solely on food and wood right now. That's all I'm worrying about. I haven't got my next TC card, so we'll see what that is. I've gone ahead and built a consulate, a village, which I built here. And I'm going to probably go ahead and build another banner army. Sorry, another war academy. So I can start getting more military units out. So you can see here, what I suggest that you do here, if you're in a harassing position, is to try and use your Chu canoes to pick off villagers and also any sort of heavy infantry, and use your pikes just to take down houses. A lot of people don't think this. A lot of people try and focus on the TC. You're never going to take the TC down at this stage. You know, with the units that I've got, I'm never going to do that, right? And there's no point. It's a waste. So what I suggest is you pick off the smaller HP buildings, like maybe the market can be quite annoying, but the main thing is taking down houses, because if you can pop cap him and house him, that's what the term's called, housing him, it really frustrates your opponent, and they've got to use more wood, and it messes with their macro, and you get some good XP from it. So I suggest targeting some houses if you can, or if you have enough pikes, target military buildings. That can be also a great thing to do as well. I should have used my step riders there to probably help take down the houses. You can see here my macro split, and now the next card that I'm going for is 700 coin. So now I've made the decision that I want to start focusing on aging up. I've made that decision now. We are above him in score, which is really, really good. And I've had quite a good exchange, and I'm harassing him a bit, and I feel like I want to kind of age up here. So that's what I'm going to do. And saying that, I think I'm probably going to contradict myself here. I've got a feeling that I age up a little bit later than I should be, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm going for the 700 gold. And I think the issue is that what I should be doing right now is, instead of having 11 people on wood, I should move them all over to food and a couple on gold, so that we can get ready to get up into age 3. And I think that was one of my mistakes here. So just make sure if you are going for 700 gold, say to yourself, why am I getting 700 gold? Okay. Most of the time you're going to be using it to get into Age 3. So make sure that your villagers are preparing to get up into Age 3. Of course I'm going to make mistakes. This was a live game. I'm not playing against a computer. I'm showing you a real life game in action so you guys can get the best experience. So I've gone for the Consulate and I've gone for the Brits. So the Brits is a great one to go for. You can either go for the Brits or for Germany. If you go for Germany, Germany's great for some eco upgrades and trickles and stuff like that from the Consulate. And I always suggest switching from Germany to the Brits when you get into Age 3. But I most of the time just like straight going for the Brits because you get a 7% HP boost to all of your military units, which is really nice. And you also get access to the unit shipment card, which is your musketeers, which is really nice as well. So the 700 gold is hit, so we're going to gather that. And you see we're using some of our herdables here to get our food a lot quicker, because you gather food quicker from herdables, if you didn't know that. And now we're moving out a little bit to gather some more hunts, because we don't really have any hunts around us, so we got to move out, unfortunately. I'm just poking here. This is called poking, just sort of coming in, taking a couple of villagers, backing off, you know, not committing too much, just like that. Look, just picked off a Janissary, and I'm going to pick off another Vil here. There you go, another one down. I'm going to use the Steppe Riders here to have a look and see if he's got anything over there, and he does. Look, I've spotted some villagers that I'm going to pick off, which is nice. And I'm going to use the remaining pikes there to just focus on that stables. So you can see I'm still training Han. I think this is where I went slightly wrong with the build. I went for 700 gold, but then I carried on making the old Han banner army, which consists of food and wood. Which is kind of weird because I've got 950 gold here that's sat here now and I'm not using it at all. So that was one of my mistakes in this game. I suggest that, as I mentioned, move those villagers over to food and get into Age 3. That's what I suggest you do. You can see here I'm just picking off villagers. I'm doing a relatively good job. I think I probably killed about maybe 4 villagers now. I'm going to pick off another villager. Oh no, you put them in the TC. Okay. You can see I'm just using that pikeman there to take down the stables, and I've got more armies coming out. I've got 64 pop right now. Look at these 2 armies coming out. Another group. Now he's got his falconets because he's got into Age 3. So he's done his semi-fast fortress. He's managed to get up into Age 3, and he's done the classic shipment that a lot of European civs will do, and that will be getting 2 falconets. So we want to back off in this situation. It's not worth the fight. We don't have the units capable to take down that falconet. So we're going to retreat back, and this is the point where I decide that I'm going to get into Age 3. So I think I start taking villagers off of wood here. But for some crazy reason, I decide to go for the rattan shields, and I think this was a mistake. I think I meant to actually cancel this, but I didn't. This is another mistake that I did. I wouldn't have done that. Would not have done that. What I would have done is I probably would have gone either for another unit shipment card, or I would have just waited to get into Age 3. You can see here I'm just poking again. Got to be a little bit careful of those falcons though. Picked off a couple of my Tucanoos. But I'm just trying to get an idea of his army size and seeing what he's got. You can see I'm starting to get more food now. I'm bringing that herd in there. I mean, I've got to be honest with you guys, this isn't a perfect game for me. You know, I'm just trying to show you in a real life situation what ideally you should do. But sometimes that changes, you know, and that all comes with experience. So here I move everybody off of wood. I say to myself, why am I getting wood? I don't need it right now. I want to get up into Age 3. So I decide to move them all off of wood, and I get them onto food and onto gold so we can get into that Age 3. And the rattan shields have come out. Rattan shields are a great unit. I think you could maybe try and lame a little bit with it and be a bit cheesy and rush your opponent with rattan shields. They have been nerfed a little bit, but I think they're still pretty potent in Age 2, like early Age 2. Like what you could do is you could get a 700 gold shipment, and then you could go ahead and get rattan shields. or something crazy like that. I don't know. That's just a suggestion. I haven't tried it. So, okay, see, we're getting our food here. We just need a bit more gold. I'm having a look with my step rider, seeing if he's got a trading post, because the Ottomans, they like to build trading posts. And I spot a trading post right here. I'm going to use that to take it down, because step riders have a really good siege damage. I build a market. Building a market's always good, especially you might want to build a market when you get your 700 wood shipment. It's entirely up to you. I tend to build it in transition between age 2 and age 3, but it's entirely up to you. So we've nearly got enough now for age 3. Now I'm getting a little bit nervous here because I'm giving him time to mass his army up. Called massing, that's another word. Massing your army. And I can see he's got a couple of cavalry archers up top there that were taking down my step riders, which I kind of found a bit weird why he actually trained cavalry archers. Because maybe he was anticipating that I was gonna be getting a lot of cav out. So you can see I'm getting into age 3 now, and I'm just going to show you if I can move over. Let me just come off of here. I age up with the porcelain tower. Now, once again, I suggest 95% of the time to go with the porcelain tower, especially if you're just learning the civilization and you're relatively new to China. Porcelain tower is awesome because it gives you an insane amount of trickle. And trickle is essentially an automatic amount of resources that you get per second. Infinitely for the rest of the game. And there's different buttons that you can click or different styles of trickle that you can have. And you can have just food, just wood, just gold, or a mixture. And if you have a mixture, you'll also get export, I believe. Yes, you'll also get export and XP, which is really interesting. But most of the time, I will just put this on wood. And the reason I put it on wood is simply because wood is the slowest resource to get. And it's the most annoying to remember to get. So I like to just stick the porcelain tower on wood and forget about it. Because that will help me get my villages down. It will help me get maybe an extra TC down. It will help me get all that sort of stuff. Because the sort of army composition that we're going to be going in age 3 is going to be food and gold based. Okay, and I'm going to show you the 2 main banner armies that I use. And they primarily cost food and gold. Well, they do. They cost food and gold. So we don't need to worry so much about wood. So I suggest just putting your porcelain tower on wood. So you can see here we are building a village further out here. I think that's not the best placing for a village, but I like to use them because they've got a good line of sight and you can use it to garrison. You can see here I'm getting some just gather upgrades from the market here. I suggest going for like the hunting eagle is good, and for the one that sort of is like the one that provides an upgrade to all of your collection rate. I suggest to go for that one as well. So here we go. So he's pushing out now. He's got his army. He's quite confident. He can see that I'm still in age 2, but look at all the units that we've got. Look at all this massive units. I mean, they're not amazing units, but it's scary. Look at all the infantry that I've got here. You know, it's quite substantial. And we're going to be moving out. And I've got some musketeers, the redcoats. That's from my consulate, which I suggest that you get. Always get a consulate. So he is going to take that village down, which is kind of going to be quite annoying for me. And I'm just trying to think about the best way to approach this, you know. As I've always said to people who are new to the game, don't fight on their terms. If you lose a building, it's different to losing your entire army or having a really bad fight. If you have a really bad fight, you could potentially lose the whole game. So just sort of wait for the best opportunity for you to strike. And I want to try and take his falcons out. And I'm going to sacrifice my step riders to swoop around the back and see if I can grab those falconets. And there they are. They're right here. They're sort of out of... So I'm really trying to take those down. And I'm going to move forward with my infantry here. They are a bit bunched up, which isn't the best. But luckily, the rattan shields are sort of a bit of a meat shield here for us. I've got some more red coats coming out, which are the musketeers. That's from the consulate. And now I'm getting my first Banner Army units, which is the Forbidden Army. So what I suggest, guys, when you get into Age 3, just try and focus on 2 Banner Armies, and that is the Forbidden Army and the Territorial Army. The Territorial Army is essentially an upgraded Old Han Banner Army, and that consists of a Changdo, which is a guy with a massive sword, and he's basically like a pike unit. He's really good against cavalry. And the Arquebusier, which is your skirmisher unit, which is really good against heavy infantry. You've got your Forbidden Army, which is a mix of heavy cav. One is the Iron Flail, which is good against ranged infantry. And the other is the Meteor Hammers, which are really good against artillery. So a great combination. The Forbidden Army with the Territorial Army is a great staple for China. And I suggest you give that army composition a go. You can see here that I'm sort of pushing him back. I'm using the cavalry there to snare him, so it slows him down and he can't run away. I'm trying to sort out my macro here. And you are going to need a lot of people on gold. I'm just telling you now. You're going to need more people on gold than food. Currently I've got a split there of 15 vils on food and 15 vils on gold. Honestly, I would suggest having more on gold because you're going to need it. You know, very gold heavy, so just bear that in mind. So we are getting our next unit card out, which is the 10 Arquebusiers. So in Age 3, there are many sort of cards you can go. Sometimes people will go for the Intervention, which will get you another shipment from your consulate. So it depends on who you're allied with. I'm allied with the Brits, so I'm going to get some heavily upgraded musketeer units if I go for that, or I just stick with another unit card like the 10 Arquebusiers is nice. 5 Meteor Hammers is even better. That's a really good card. Or if you want to go more eco based, then go for the 1000 Wood. It sort of depends on the situation. So we're moving forward now. We're going to do like a counter offensive, and we're going to see what he's got. Because I'm just going to push him here because I'm feeling quite confident. I've got a lot of infantry here. And all I can say to you guys is keep macroing. Keep creating banner armies as you're attacking. Don't try and get too sort of sidetracked by the fight, because you'll forget about making units. The way that China survives is that they snowball. So they snowball with a large quantity of units, and you've got to keep that pumping. Got to keep that supply of units, otherwise you will lose. And that goes, you sort of just need to keep creating villages as well, making sure that your resources are coming in, all that sort of good stuff. You can see here that I'm just focusing on his military buildings. I'm not too interested in his TC. I want to deny him of making any more military, so I'm taking down his not his stables, his barracks. You can see here that I'm just having a look around with my cav, seeing if I can find any vills. Which I can, which is very nice. Picking a couple of those off. Taking down his barracks. We're now 5k up in score, which is nice. Looks like he got a 5 Janissary shipment, which was interesting. And look at our resources. Look at our resources. Now we're pop capped. This is it. This is a problem. This is what I said. You gotta be careful. You gotta make sure that you're building villages. Look at all this resources that I've got in, and I can't fulfill it because I don't have a village built. So he has got a foul count, but luckily I've got 3 cav units here to sweep round the back. And you watch how quickly they take that down. It's gone. Easy as that. And we've got a nice sort of mix of Arquebusiers, Chu Canoes, Redcoats. Like, we're just mashing it up with China. It's a great civ to have a ton of different types of units to really throw your opponent off. We've got 10 Arquebusiers coming in. It's getting crazy. Now one thing, here we go, yeah, sorry. Lo Shi GG. There it is, guys. There it is. That is the build order in action. And we're going to finish off this beginner's guide with just a quick conclusion and a rundown and just things to note when you do start playing this civ. Right guys, that is the end of the beginner's guide. We are just going to be wrapping it up with things to note for these civilizations. So first things first is this civ will require quite a bit of micro. Now, I know that's quite scary for some guys, but you just got to bear with it. And what I suggest that you do is that you control group the unit type. So if you've got Tucanus, Arquebusiers and Redcoats, for example, which are your musketeer units, I would control group all of those under one group. And then if you've got your Iron Flail and your Meteor Hammer, I would control group them under a second control group. And if you've got Changdo or Pike, for example, I put those over a third group. So it can get very frustrating and it is quite micro intensive, but the more you practice, the better you will get. And also because of the crazy unit comps, you will throw your opponent off and they will not be too sure about how to counter you, which is pretty crazy. And the final thing is just build villages. Make sure that you don't get pop cats, and make sure that you're constantly pumping units out, because quantity is what you need with this Civ. So that is it. So guys, I hope you really enjoyed this beginner's guide. Please feel free to check out other beginner's guides that I've done on the Dutch, India, and also the Brits as well. And also please feel free to check out my beginner's economy guide, beginner military guide, and my easiest and hardest civs to play. All those great videos. And as I say guys, you've been amazing on the channel and through Twitch as well. If you really liked this video, show your support with a thumbs up. And also you can catch me streaming on Twitch at Widgie1. See you guys later.